The Monday night loss is going to leave the Minnesota Vikings soul searching heading into the bye. Let's pick up the pieces. It's the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, Luke Braun. If you're new here, it's nice to meet you. And you can find the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is an audio listening place like the SiriusXM app. We're partnered with them. You can also find this show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Thank you so much to those of you who listen to this show every single day. My hashtag everydayers, my loyal co-conspirators in suffering, and we sure are suffering today as the Vikings lose 12-10. This suffer episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. First things first. Anybody who's not a Vikings fan who watched the Monday Night Football game and happens to be listening to this, I am so sorry for what you had to see. That wasn't an acceptable display of football by anybody involved. That was awful, and it was very squarely the Vikings' fault. They deserve this one. I did a YouTube short. The Vikings deserve to lose here, and I think the chief thing is Josh Dobbs deserved an L. Josh Dobbs was a catastrophe. We'll break down everything that went wrong here, but also the offense itself had some issues. Running the ball was not good. It's never good. Defensively, though, the Vikings played so well on the defensive side of the ball. Didn't allow a touchdown. 3 field goals, one of which was the only one that the defense gave up off of turnovers, and there were 4 of those. 4 turnovers. I mean, it's just unacceptable. Something's got to give here. Something should have changed mid-game. Something more should have changed mid-game than what would have changed. And we'll kind of go over O'Connell's role in all this and just how upset we should be. Here's the deal. When we go over games like this where there's a lot of moving parts, right? The defense played well until they didn't in the last bit. And Josh Dobbs played poorly, and what impact did they have? And what were the Kevin O'Connell decisions that actually, what's the blame? I don't like to do the blame pie chart percentage or any of that, because when you think about the way that it'll be handled over the next 2 weeks, I'm trying to think of where the Vikings are going to be. They go into their bye now. Justin Jefferson will come back after the bye. He was not activated for this game. They'll have a lot of soul searching to do with their quarterback and the way that they've structured their offense generally and how much work they can get done in the week leading up to it. The coaches are going to have a lot of theory crafting to do, right? But everybody's going to look at themselves, right? There is no entity that needs to look at this game and say, well, we say it's 55% on Dobbs and 25% on O'Connell and blah, blah, blah. We don't need to do that. Right? Nobody does. We're not simulating anything useful, and I don't think we can really learn anything by doing that. But I think we can learn by thinking about it and going, okay, if you are Josh Dobbs or you're Josh Dobbs' quarterback coach or somebody who's responsible in some part for Josh Dobbs' play, how do you approach this? And I don't think you can say burn the tape. I think has to be a diagnostic element to this. What went wrong? And you have to look at all of it, right? Dobbs started the game with a 3-and-out, taking a sack by holding the ball pretty long. I want to double check to see how much of that was on the quarterback or not, but it felt like it was a pretty long pocket. And then he took a stunt from Montez Sweat where O'Neal and Ingram didn't pick it up right. So we'll put a pin in that for now. The second drive was a horrific interception. It's bad. It looked bad, and the more you analyze it, the worse it gets. He's throwing a corner route versus cover 2, which it's a corner route that's supposed to kind of carve down a little bit. It's more just like an out. And throwing that against cover 2 is really, really dangerous because there is a defender lurking underneath it that can do exactly what happened, can intercept it. It was Jalen Johnson. That defender, Jalen Johnson, did bite on the underneath route that he's supposed to bite on to open up that out route. But when that happens, you either got to zip it past him, you got to put heat on it, or you have to put distance on it so that corner can't make the play. We got neither of those things. It was this long floaty pass that took forever to get there and fell short. And so Jalen Johnson could pick it off. Abysmal. It was a bad decision. Like, that's a risky throw to decide to do anyways. He probably should just come off that. Like, if it's Kirk, we're onto the backside of the progression. But if you're gonna throw that, it has to be a good throw, and it was a terrible throw. So we're just off to this horrible this horrible start anyways. I think Dobbs invited a lot of pressure onto himself by holding the ball too long. Again, I'll put a pin in all of those. Like, I don't want to commit to it until I've really seen it all. But in the moments afterwards, it's like, man, everything took forever. There were a lot of third downs that didn't get converted. There was a 4th and 8 that didn't get converted that was there on an out route to TJ Hawkinson. It was open, but it took too long to get there. And either that's the ball being late, that's the ball being slow. And I mean, I'm talking fractions of a second here. So it's kind of an arm strength thing. How quickly can you zip that thing over there? Or are you putting loft under it so it floats and then defensive backs can get back into it? Or in the case of an out route that needs to get to the sticks, you catch the ball too close to the sideline to be able to make a play. Hawkinson caught that ball and reached out for the pylon, right? It was there. The only reason it didn't get a first down is because he caught that ball too close to the sideline to be able to turn, reach, and get there. By the time he reached, he was already out of bounds. That's time. That's that ball being late. There were a couple times when Dobbs did zip it. Those went poorly because the receivers, I think one was KJ Osborne, one was Jordan Addison, correct me if I'm wrong on that, tipped up interception bears. And some of that's bad luck, right? It falls directly in there, but it's a tip drill too. They practice that. So good for the Bears for getting those. Those aren't particularly on Dobbs, but there was what should have been a 5th interception thrown toward TJ Hawkinson on, I think, the same concept where as the corner route to Jalen Johnson. It could have been a second one to Jalen Johnson, but this time he just threw the under route directly to a defender. And I think when that happens, when you start misreading concepts because of what happened the last time you read that concept, it was very clearly, I got spooked by that corner, I'm throwing the underneath thing now. When that's where your brain goes, I think you just got to get out of the game. And I think the correct move in this one, I've said it on a bunch of things, I'll say it here now, and I've got a plan for this, so don't freak out. But I think if Nick Mullens plays in this game, I think if you pull Dobbs at halftime, you pull Mullens in, I think the Vikings win. Because as much as Mullens isn't an exciting quarterback, he gets the ball out on time and he reads out the concepts correctly. He doesn't offer you a ton of scramble. He doesn't offer really cool, flashy throws. He doesn't go downfield a lot, but he'll play point guard. And you can work with that, right? And the Vikings they needed 13 points to win this game. 13. Because of how well the defense was playing. You didn't need dynamic quarterbacking, right? You didn't need the full Kirk Cousins against San Francisco Monday night experience to do this one. But instead, you put Josh Dobbs back out there, and what does he do? He starts taking some pressures, he tries to flip the ball away, and he does this 2 or 3 times in the game, where he's getting sacked, and he just tries to flip the ball to try to get rid of it, and it's either intentional grounding or it's directly into the arms of a defensive tackle and it gets tipped up and it gets intercepted again. You could tell that his mind was no longer reading things out the way that they're supposed to be. And sometimes your head just gets out of it. Sometimes you just aren't thinking straight because this has happened, because there's pressure and because you've taken a couple hits, you get rattled. You're seeing ghosts. You've heard all the cliches about that. And I think when that happens, it's time to say, all right, ain't your night. We'll talk more about whether or not you'll start next week, but look, you're out of it this time. You got the twisties. If you're a gymnastics fan, you know what that means. You got the yips, right? It's over. We got to get you out of here. Let's put the super safe guy in and let's just see if we can't get any kind of offense going. I think that was the move here. And O'Connell said he did mull that over. So I'm not coming from a crazy place here. He said he did mull that over at halftime, ended up deciding against it. And I just think that was a bad decision. I just disagree with that decision. And they're going to have to make a similar version of that decision going into the bye week. We have a lot of time to talk about it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to Nick Mullens in the preseason. see what I can find from him. I know it's against preseason players, and we can, sort of keep that in mind as we watch, but I'm going to do Patreon stuff about it, maybe write an article for Wide Left, maybe write something else. I don't know yet, but I'm going to investigate that take, right? I say it's time for Dobbs to get out of there. I am currently on, and it's just a hypothesis, the hypothesis of it is correct to bench Josh Dobbs. But I want to watch a lot more tape and check on that before I commit to it, right? Like, I don't want to be super overreactionary, but I want to think about it. I want to investigate it. So that's going to be what a lot of this week is, and next week as we go through the bye week. But we also have Kevin O'Connell. You are not free of sin. And the defense isn't free of sin either, even though they overall had a very good day. So let's go over those two things as well as we mourn this loss, Monday night loss to the Bears. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is a great place to find last-minute tickets to certain events. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that the Vikings do make the playoffs. I know that's a tough sell coming off of two pretty ugly losses and a really abysmal offense, not knowing what the quarterback situation is, but let's say they do, and you say, oh my goodness, we want to go. Maybe you live in that area or whatever. But it's hard to find tickets, right? They get price gouged and marked up. That is what Gametime is for. They find last minute deals, flash sales, all that good stuff. A picture of your seat so you can make sure you're not getting screwed with an obstructed view. And you can get their Gametime guarantee, which credits you back 110% of the difference if you find the same row and section somewhere else for cheaper. 110% of the difference. They are that committed to getting you set up and getting you a good deal on your ticket. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, you will be redirected to the 24/7 live Locked On Minnesota Sports feed. It's Minnesota sports talk all day long. Great thing to throw on in the background. They also have Locked On Sports Today. If you go to the Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel, it's a full national sports thing. There's nothing else like it. It's first of its kind. So go be a part of that. Check it out. Let's move on, though, from Josh Dobbs. I think I've been mean enough to him today, and we will be meaner throughout the week because that was pretty rough, pretty unacceptable. But I also go to the coaching, right? So that's what Josh Dobbs is thinking about. Why did I throw that interception? How can I be better under pressure? How can I find a way to scramble more and all that stuff? But let's say you're Kevin O'Connell. Let's put yourself in his shoes. What are you telling yourself after this one, right? What did I do wrong? And I think there are a lot of things that we can reconsider, right? In the last 3 games, this is the one everybody's really big on, and a lot of people have asked me about it on Twitter Tuesday. People sending me DMs and stuff. The last 3 games, with a lead, a 1-score lead, around 3 minutes. All 3 games, the Vikings have had that, a 1-score lead around 3 minutes. They're 1-2 from that situation. I think that means your strategy is bad. And their strategy has been to turtle, has been to go run, punt, or run, stupid screen pass, punt. And these runs are not... It'd be one thing to spread things out and, really make it look like the pass is an option and play normal offense. I think the idea of a neutral situation, middle of the third quarter, 1st and 10, you go run. I don't mind that. I understand why that will happen, and I don't get my undies in a bunch over it. But when you're in, kind of I've got a lead and I'm just trying to kill clock situation, and you do that, and you line up in 13 personnel, right? That's 3 tight ends, everybody super condensed, and it's the most run-looking formation in the world. You condense the defense as well, and you're just not that physical of a team to do that, and you run for 1 yard, it's very predictable that run gets a yard. Like, when I want to criticize play calling, I think, okay, what was that play supposed to get? What was the idea there, right? Instead of just saying, well, run for 1 yard is a bad play. Well, of course, a 1 yard gain is a bad play. Nobody just plans to get a 1 yard gain. Except QB sneaks, I guess, but that's not what we're calling, right? But the way that O'Connell is approaching this prioritizes taking away either the timeout or the 40 seconds off of the clock over any chance of that being a successful play in terms of down and distance, because I don't think that one ever works out, right? It's one thing to get a zone run and say, I expect this to get 4 yards, but I don't think you can expect 4 yards out of 13 personnel zone run, vanilla stuff that's very predictable in that situation. I don't think you can expect 4 yards out of that. And then on 2nd and 9 to do it again, even more egregious. And then on third, I think it's actually 3rd and 11 to then throw the screen pass that, is again, it's very like, it is not becoming of a coach that thinks he's made the right decision at quarterback. You really think this dude's playing well enough to start him? How about ask him to throw a pass with a chance to win the game on the line? You don't want to put the ball in his hands? Are you sure you have the right guy out there? Like, that's where I think the decision not to move away from Dobbs in that game cost them the game. You very clearly did not trust him, and yet you stuck with it. And I don't really think that, I think that was overly cautious, and maybe overly cautious is the theme for all of this. There was another thing a lot of people said about, like, well, why didn't Kevin O'Connell have Josh Dobbs scramble? And to that, I say that's not really an O'Connell decision. O'Connell can say scramble or don't scramble all he wants, but ultimately, Josh Dobbs is the one in the pocket with the football and a brain connected to his legs, right? He's the one that gets to decide that. And Josh Dobbs did not scramble. Why did he not scramble? A lot of that had to do with the Bears playing their contain lanes properly, right? Rushing off of the edge properly so that he didn't have lanes to go. But part of that is also Dobbs not seeing those opportunities when they were there. So I think that that's more of a thing about execution and not necessarily a thing about coaching. So I don't really put that particular thing on Kevin O'Connell. If I'm Kevin O'Connell and putting myself in his shoes, I'm going, did I make the right quarterback decision? And I'm reassessing that as I watch the tape, right? And I'm saying, do I need to make a different decision moving forward? And I'm reevaluating my situational football. This is situational masters, right? Well, they've been in the same situation 3 times in a row. And all 3 times the defense has needed to bail them out. That's a bad offensive strategy. I get it. You're playing to win probability more than you're playing to the score, but you're not doing a good job of playing to win probability because you aren't winning. So it's time to change that. So I think Kevin O'Connell needs to make some pretty significant changes to the way that he is approaching these games. And I think, look, I'm sure a lot of people are screaming at me like, look, Dobbs doesn't know the playbook. Of course, he's not going to be perfectly comfortable with all the contain lanes. You're not going to have access to everything. So, why would O'Connell pass with the game on the line with a quarterback that doesn't know anything? And while, yeah, that's true, whose decision was that? Why are we living like this? We do not have to. There are 2 quarterbacks in the building right now that were in training camp this year. One of them was with the team last year as well. Why are we living like this in this world where the dude doesn't know the playbook? If he is not comfortable, get him out of there. Why are we playing with a quarterback that's not comfortable? Because he was the hot hand? Well, the hand ain't hot anymore. So that excuse doesn't really go very far with me at all, because that is his fault that he's in that situation in the first place. That is an avoidable situation. And personally, poor situational management bugs me a lot, because of the emphasis that it has been for Kevin O'Connell, the situational masters thing. And how many times this year have we talked about bad situational management? And a lot of it has been in, these end game situations where determining how much is on the clock is important. Now, what I will say is at the end of the half, the field goal the Vikings got at the end of the half, at the end of the first half, was fantastic clock management. Chew 50 seconds off the clock while the Bears still had 3 timeouts, but the Bears are going to let you kill clock because they still are kind of thinking that you're going to be in a hurry up and time is your enemy, right? So they allowed clock to tick off. And then by the time you actually got into field goal range and the Bears would consider taking timeouts, there was like 26 seconds left. So it didn't matter. The Bears go into half with no possession and all 3 of their timeouts in their pocket. To me, that is dancing a circle around the other coach in terms of clock management. So I will give him credit there. But that falls a little bit short when the game was decided by the other time when you really beefed it on clock management. One other brief note, the Vikings seem to go to a more true 50-50 split between Ty Chandler and Alexander Mattison, at least in terms of snap counts, not necessarily in terms of carries. But when it comes to whether or not a given play will be a run or a pass, there's a lot of stuff going on that oftentimes the coach doesn't even have control over, because they'll call both a run and a pass, and the quarterback will choose one at the line of scrimmage based on the look or whatever. So I don't think that has a lot to do with the running backs. I think they both got equal opportunities in this one, and that 50-50 split is something that I support. I think that both Chandler and Mattison should get about half and half. And I thought Mattison, for whatever it's worth, had a pretty good game. Chandler, I don't know, kind of had a nothing burger game, and I'm not bugged by that at all, by the way. Defensively, there's so much praise to give out, and I do want to share some of the positive here. There's also the end game situational management of Brian Flores to talk about. So we have a whole bunch of defensive stuff we have to get into as well. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and it's the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you are new to Grambling and you want to get started, you want to give it a shot and maybe give yourself something to root for as you feel the Vikings season slipping away, why don't you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon? That's how you claim this. You can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So $5 on any moneyline can be something like Bulls at Celtics, let's say. Celtics are 13.5-point favorites, and they are at minus 1,000 on the money line. Not a lot to make there, but you get $150 in bonus bets back if you hit on that money line bet. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up there. Go bet on the Hornets or on the Celtics, and assuming the Celtics win, you will get $150 back. Basically 30-1 odds on that minus 1,000 bet. That's at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Safe, secure, super easy to use, and they pay out instantly when you win. FanDuel.com/lockedon, official partner of the NFL. If there is ever a bright spot to the Vikings going 0-2 in their unbelievably sick classic uniforms, it's that the defense played really, really, really well. This defense is humming. This was like the Josh Metellus game. He forced 3 fumbles in this game. Absolutely crazy stuff from Metellus. Good tackling. I do think he had a couple of blemishes just kind of getting blocked out on perimeter screens, but it was this really interesting thing that the Bears came in with. And, well, I don't want to say interesting. It was actually supremely uninteresting. It's spectacularly so, to the point where it gets so interesting in just how uninteresting it is, that the Bears decided, there's some crazy stats about this. I'll go with some tweets from Courtney Cronin about the Bears. But they went with this hyper-conservative strategy. So Justin Fields was blitzed on 52% of his dropbacks per ESPN Stats and Info. Again, credit, hat tip to Courtney Cronin on this. They decided to throw 13 screen passes. It was the lowest air yards per attempt and lowest air yards per completion of Fields' entire career. 21 of his passing attempts went at or behind the line of scrimmage. That's the most in any game since 2020. Basically, this whole game existed at the line of scrimmage, and it was all about, can the cornerbacks tackle? And the answer was an emphatic yes. So the Bears just could not move the ball. All those interceptions, turnover, Bears ball, punt. Turnover, Bears ball, punt. Turnover, Bears ball, punt. They punted on those. They went 3 and out after all 3 of those. They got 1 field goal off of 4 interceptions, 4 turnovers, 1 field goal. That's an incredible accomplishment. And I think that greatly overshadows, in terms of impact on this game, what happened at the end of the game. So to me, credit goes to Mekhi Blackman, Josh Metellus, Cam Bynum, Harrison Smith, and Byron Murphy. That's secondary. And also some fantastic plays off the edge. Danielle Hunter did Danielle Hunter things. I don't know. I've run out of things to say about Danielle Hunter in the season that he is having. It feels like I think it's one of his best seasons. I think this is at least up there with the prime Danielle Hunter, Mike Zimmer seasons, if not something more, because he's really putting that defensive front on his back. It wasn't all pretty. While it was what I just said there, that's the headline about the defense. These next 2 things to me are nitpicks. I'm going to say them, but understand that they are nitpicks. I talked a lot on yesterday's show about defending the option, right? About how to squeeze down gaps properly so that QB running didn't kill you. When Justin Fields kept the ball, it was a first down basically every time. they did a poor job of defending the option. I thought DJ Wanham didn't do a great job of that. He did have a couple of great plays in this one, some splashy near interceptions. He actually could have gotten a pick six in this off of a screen that he jumped. But I thought that he did a poor job of being disciplined and doing the thing where you have to you have to sort of come at the quarterback a little bit to force the quarterback to give the ball. And then you have to squeeze down the cutback lane that you have now created by playing it conservatively. And I think that second part he was a little slow to, and they got some good runs off of that. A nitpick. But I thought that they didn't do a very good job of defending the option of having one guy for each person and being disciplined in that way. They were way more prepared to defend like the perimeter screens, which, to be fair, apparently that was the move because the Bears only did that. Then you have the drive at the end of the game. So the Bears get the ball with 2:36 left, by the way. So plenty of time. The Vikings did eat all of the Bears' timeouts by being hyper conservative, but 2:36 left. Great job, offense. Thanks for setting up the defense for success. They have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That's basically a normal drive. And Justin Fields did a good job of evading pressure, running around, finding things, improvising, and playing schoolyard ball. This was not the same thing as the Broncos game where they just got killed by a whole bunch of checkdowns. And they did sometimes. The production the Bears did happen on catching the Vikings blitzing and checking it down. That's always going to happen. That's not like they need to fix this problem. This is just a side effect of the way the Vikings do business, and the Bears didn't score a touchdown. So on the whole, you kind of just have to take that and say it's okay, it's worth it. But when it came to that 2 minute, the Vikings stopped blitzing. 5 passing attempts, the Vikings did not blitz on any of them. That's pretty questionable, right? And I think part of it, I might defend that decision a little bit. I get it. I understand. Like, I would have loved to see more pressure on. I mean, it's Fields, right? How well is he going to beat the blitz? And even if he does beat the blitz, I kind of like, I support the idea of like, we probably should have made him prove that, right? Like, we should have tested him in that way. But when there is no run game, which there isn't in like a 2 minute drill, right? There's not really a run game well, there was a run game in the first couple attempts, in the first couple plays. So like, you didn't even kill enough clock to make them not able to run the ball. I'm pissed about it. But later, after the 2 minute warning, when there really is no run threat to speak of, the blitzes sort of change because when you blitz on, 2nd and 6, that could be a run play, right? And so you have to sort of work the blitz in with the run fit. If that guy is coming around the edge, you have to make sure that the run fit is set up to make sure that if they run past the blitz, it's not a huge play, right? Or if they run away from the blitz, it's not a huge play. You have to be able to like structure everything properly. In a non-run threat situation, blitzes are just attacking protections, which is a different world, right? And that's not necessarily better or worse for the blitz or for the protection. It's a different geometry. And maybe they didn't feel like they liked that geometry. That's the best explanation I can come up with for why Brian Flores now in the last 2 games has decided with the game on the line that he is going to go away from his identity. I hate it though, because you're also only rushing 4. So you only have 7 in coverage. Those are a lot easier to pick apart. And Justin Fields is really good at buying time. So he can buy time and just find a way for those zones to get picked apart. I would have rather they sent somebody. I get why they didn't do it, but it's another thing that's like, okay, this is the second game in a row you've lost in this exact same way by turtling on offense, turtling on defense, and the other team beats you, strikes you out looking. I don't think you can afford to strike out looking anymore. I think the Vikings can afford to lose 2 more games this year. If you lose 2 more games, you're 6-6, right? You lose 2 more games, you'll be 9-8, and you're on the cusp of wild card range. Maybe you're dealing with tiebreakers. They've got 5 games left, so they have to go at least 3-2, probably 4-1 to make the playoffs. I don't want to strike out looking anymore. I don't want to lose to the Lions with the season on the line, not blitzing and not trying to beat the other team and just hoping that they don't complete passes or whatever. I'm sick of treating the other team like a sack of potatoes. Go win the damn game. That's all I got to say. We'll talk tomorrow. I'll watch the tape and all that stuff. See you guys next time. It's bye week. As always, Skull.